The day was calm, the lake glimmering under the midday sun. When the peace was shattered by the unmistakable sound of determined footsteps crunching down the gravel path toward my cabin, I didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Around. Here, her arrival carried the subtlety of a thunderclap. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, had been circling me ever since I bought the property. I had refused to join her beloved HOA, and to her, that was an unforgivable sin. My refusal wasn't born of spite, but of principle. I hadn't bought this cabin, and the land around it, to pay fees for someone else's rules. I came for freedom. For solitude. For the right to watch the water ripple without being told how long my grass should be, or what color my shutters ought to match. Karen didn't see it that way. To her, non-compliance wasn't just rebellion, it was a personal insult. This time, she came armed not with a smile, but with fury. Her sunglasses sat perched high on her nose, and she carried a clipboard as if it were a weapon. Without a word of greeting, she stomped straight past my porch and down onto the pier I had built with my own hands, the sharp click of her shoes. Against the wood grated against the natural harmony of the lake, she planted herself at the edge, turned, and jabbed her finger toward the planks beneath her. "This," she declared in a voice that seemed to echo across the still water, "is community property. By refusing to join the association, you forfeited your rights to it. Effective immediately, I'll be assigning it for neighborhood use." She said it like a verdict, final and absolute. As though her word carried the weight of law, I set down the fishing line I had been working on and leaned against the railing, watching her performance with quiet disbelief. My pier wasn't just some accessory stuck into the shore. It was a labor of love. I had hauled the lumber myself, sweating through long summer days to measure and cut each plank. I had sunk the pilings into the soft lake bed until my hands were blistered raw. I had stained the wood so it could weather the seasons. The lanterns fixed along the edges were my own touch, glowing softly at dusk, casting golden light across the water. Every inch of it bore my mark, my effort, my investment. And here she was, standing on it as if she had conjured it into existence with nothing more than a regulation from her HOA handbook. Karen rattled on, listing rules and bylaws as though they were gospel. She talked about pier size restrictions, shared maintenance responsibilities, and annual fees that would need to be collected. She even went so far as to suggest scheduling community hours for fishing and boating, during which my dock would be open to anyone in the neighborhood who felt like using it. Her voice dripped with authority, and her tone was that of someone used to winning arguments simply by outlasting the other person. The absurdity of it all made me bite back a laugh. The only people with rights to my pier were me and anyone I chose to invite in. Karen certainly wasn't on that list. But she wasn't just talking. She was staking a claim. I could see it in the way she stood, shoulders squared, chin raised, as if daring me to contradict her. She truly believed her clipboard was more powerful than my deed. She believed her association's grip extended over everything in sight, including the boards she was standing on. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that she was trespassing not just on wood and nails, but on something protected by ink and law. My ownership wasn't a matter of opinion. It was a matter of record, signed, sealed, and filed at the courthouse. She could bark all she wanted, but she couldn't change the truth. I didn't interrupt. Not yet. I let her finish her speech. Her finger jabbing the air like a conductor leading a symphony only she could hear. I wanted to see how far she would take it, how deep into her illusion of power she would dive. As the lake breeze lifted her hair and the sun glinted off her sunglasses, I realized this wasn't just about the pier. Well, to Karen, it was about control. She couldn't stand the idea that one person had slipped free of her HOA's net. And so, she came here onto my property, thinking that sheer audacity could bend reality. She was wrong. Dead wrong. And though I hadn't spoken a word yet, I already knew how this confrontation would end because I had two things she couldn't argue with: the deed in my desk drawer and the rifle above my mantel. When Karen finally stopped her tirade, the silence that followed was almost deafening. The water lapped gently against the pilings of the pier. Birds chirped faintly in the distance. And for a moment, It was as if the lake itself was mocking her with its calmness. She stared at me, arms folded tight across her chest, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to nod and hand over what she thought she had just claimed. But I didn't move. I let the stillness sit heavy between us, enjoying how her confidence began to waver the longer I didn't answer. Her polished shoes tapped against the wood as she shifted uncomfortably, clearly not used to her proclamations being met with silence. Finally, she snapped, "Well, do you understand what I've just told you? That was my cue." I pushed off the railing and walked slowly toward the cabin, not saying a word. Behind me, Karen let out a sharp laugh that was more nervous than triumphant. "Oh, running off already? I thought you'd have more backbone than that." I ignored her jab and stepped inside, heading straight for the mantel. The rifle rested in its usual place, gleaming faintly in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. I slung it over my shoulder, not as a threat, but as a statement. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder, the papers inside crisp and official, embossed with seals and signatures that carried real weight. When I stepped back onto the porch, Karen's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to the rifle, then to the folder tucked under my arm, and I saw the first crack in her armor. She tried to cover it with another scoff, but her voice trembled just slightly. "Oh. You can parade around with props all you like," she sneered. "But nothing changes the fact that the association." I cut her off by flipping open the folder and spreading the deed across the bench that sat at the end of the pier. The bold print, the lot number, the legal description of shoreline rights, all of it was laid bare under the midday sun. "This pier," said slowly, pointing to the document, "is mine. Built on my land, maintained with my money, protected by my rights." And this, I tapped the seal with my finger, is the only piece of paper that matters. Not whatever rules you scribble down in a binder, not the bylaws your little club votes on. This deed trumps every word on your clipboard, and you know it. Her lips parted, searching for a comeback, but nothing came. I pressed on, lowering my voice so it carried more weight. "I don't mind being neighborly. I don't mind people keeping to their own homes and enjoying the peace of this place. But you crossed a line when you marched down here onto my property and tried to tell me what's mine. It's trespassing, Karen. And the only reason I haven't called the sheriff yet is because I'd rather give you the chance to walk away." For the first time since she arrived, she looked uncertain. Her eyes flicked to the rifle resting on my shoulder, then back to the deed, then finally to my face. She tried to gather herself, muttering about pending disputes and unrecognized filings, but her words lacked their earlier bite. The authority in her voice had drained away, replaced by something closer to frustration and fear. She shifted her weight, clearly eager to retreat, but too proud to admit defeat outright. So, I helped her along. I closed the folder with deliberate calm, slid the papers back inside, and tucked it under my arm again. "Here's how this is going to work," I said evenly. "You'll walk back up that path. We'll tell your association that this pier is off limits. I will stop knocking on my door with demands that have no basis in reality. If you don't, well, then I'll be forced to review how your HOA has been operating on the land you lease from me. And I promise you, Karen, I won't like what I find." That struck her harder than the sight of the rifle. She blanched, her jaw tightening as though she had just bitten into something sour. The fight went out of her shoulders, and after a moment of silence, she spun on her heel. The click of her shoes rang across the pier as she stormed back up the path, muttering under her breath. I watched her go, the lake returning to its quiet rhythm, till she disappeared among the trees, when the last trace of her was gone. I sat down on the bench and let out a long breath. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't care. Stared out at the water, the surface glistening in the sunlight, and felt the tension drain from my chest. Karen would be back. People like her always came back. But now she knew the truth. The pier wasn't hers, wasn't the HOA's, and never would be. It was mine, protected by steel and by ink, and no amount of shouting on a clipboard could change that.